So we're actually halfway through this board now, which is pretty cool. I hope you'll agree. I am facing a little bit of a dilemma though, because I want to fill up the rest of this board, and I have got a few worked out that I definitely want to do. But as you can see, there's also a few kind of gaps. So I was wondering if anyone in the comments would like to say something they'd like to see in there. Let's get on with the eye tutorial, and then I'll show you at the end how it worked out. For those Bendy Boy Chisel fans out there, don't worry, it looks like the Bendy Boy Chisel has finally returned. So we're just doing the outline as usual, like I always do. And I like to get fairly deep with this when I do the outline. And then I come in with the other kind of bendy chisel and I scoop all this stuff out. You could do this with a gouge. Probably not best to do it with a straight flat kind of chisel, because then you'd leave loads of scratch marks in the wood. But you know what, it really depends on what you're trying to do. If you like having the scratch marks in the wood, then do it that way, you know. Then I take the Bendy Boy chisel and I do another deep outline around the outside of the eyeball. The thing you have to remember when making an eye that I think about a lot while making it is that it is in fact a ball, right? So it is, you know, it's called an eyeball for a reason. It is a ball. So even in a relief carving, you really want to get a kind of curve coming from the center to the outer edges. So you want the outer edges, which I'm doing right now, to be quite deep, going quite far back. And then where the pupil is, you want it to be at the front. In other words, that needs to be the bit of the carving that sticks out the most from the wood. So I'm just using the Bendy Boy chisel to take more and more little slivers off there to curve the eyeball round a bit more. It's kind of hard to grasp the curve of it while you're doing it. You have to kind of keep thinking about it and think about where that ball is. So there's the center point. That's the highest point of the carving, except for maybe the top and the bottom eyelids that are in the same position, but you'll see that in a second. So I'm using the bench chisel, or one of my bench chisels that I've got, because I can get that really sharp. I don't know if you've sharpened a bench chisel in an honing guide before. You probably have. I can get them the sharpest because I can put a guide on them, whereas the others I'm just doing by hand, right? So because my wrists and my fingers move around a little bit, it doesn't get quite as sharp as I can with a bench chisel. So when I have a chance to use it for cutting wood, I use it. There's the top and the bottom eyelids, the highest points on those. And now that I've curved the eyeball round a bit, I want to do the same to the eyelid because it's kind of hugging the eyeball. You might not know it just from this video, but I have a multitude of other carving projects going on at any given time. This one I just finished recently. It's a Star Destroyer crashing into a planet. That's all carved from wood and then painted. Here's another one. This is a black shuck, which is a dog from Suffolk folklore where I live, like a demon dog. There's its kind of a clay model that I made, and I'm working from that using the measurements to make this. And the other one, I'm going to zoom in on because it's over there, you might have seen, is Howl's Moving Castle, if you're familiar with the Studio Ghibli film. That's all carved from wood, all little bits glued and added together and then painted. So if you haven't watched those videos, give them a look. So at this point I'm just working on the lower eyelid, and I just basically completely obliterated that bit that I made earlier. So I'm going to have to come back and make that later. I don't know if this is how eyes are actually on people, but for some reason folding that lower eyelid around on the outside edge of the eye seems to be a thing that people do all the time, and I guess it looks pretty good. Maybe it just adds to the layers to have that kind of top eyelid going over the top and the bottom one slotting up underneath it. Gives it more interest. I don't really know, but I guess I need to study my own eyes a bit more and maybe other people's eyes just to see what they look like. I guess I probably shouldn't just, like, you know, walk up to people and start looking at their eyes. But you know what I mean. A study of anatomy is quite difficult and probably one of the harder things to study, I think, when it comes to like carving or sculpting or whatever. Anatomy is really, really tricky. So now I'm just putting a kind of bowl shape on the eyelids as well, because as I said earlier, they're kind of wrapping around the eyeball, and because the eyeball is meant to be this, you know, this ball shape, the more I can add to it to give it that kind of curviness, the more convincing it is. At least that's how I think it is anyway. So the bendy boy chisel is really good for this kind of thing, so I can just take away all these little bits and then I can cut them off from the other edge just by going along with the corner of the chisel. This bit here is kind of just like a waste taking away mission. I'm using the other bendy chisel with the curved end just to scoop out all the stuff. It's the same one I used to scoop out the waste at the beginning. And of course it's helping the eye pop out from the wood a little bit more. This isn't necessarily the way an eye would be carved onto someone's face, you know, you'd have to think more about the surrounding area. But because we're just focusing on the eye, I figured I would just carve the stuff out and have the eye more pronounced, so it just looked a bit more interesting, I suppose, just using the eye as a feature on its own. So now I'm figuring out where the iris and the pupil is. It's quite important to have the iris go into the top eyelid. As you can see there, it's not a complete circle, it's kind of slotting into the top eyelid. And that's because if you make the iris complete, like the whole circle, then you'll have an eye that looks shocked. Which you might want. I mean, if you're doing a thing, you have an eye that looks shocked, then maybe, you know, do that. At least that's how I've found is what it looks like anyway. Maybe not all the time, but that's what it looks like when I do it. At this point, while I'm taking the waste away from around the pupil, I just want to thank my patrons for their continued support. Thank you very much, guys. They have been helping the channel out, buying wood and tools and stuff like that. And in fact, the tulip wood that I bought for the black shuck sculpture that you saw a bit earlier in the video was bought completely by the patrons. If you become a patron, you get to see ideas and sketches and stuff early on. You get to have a say in the content of my videos and just get to chat about stuff. So if you want to join the Patreon, then there's a link in the description. Thanks very much. So after I hollowed out the iris, I then sort of chamfered around the pupil. A lot of people like to make the pupil go inside the eye, so it would be like another scoop further down inside rather than it protruding. I kind of quite like this pupil protruding thing, so I just continue to do it. I just think it's more, I don't know, I find it more interesting. And then we just clean up with a toothbrush and slap on some bowl linseed oil, and that was it. So at the halfway point, I think it's looking kind of cool. The eye is quite stylistic, but then, you know, I think a lot of things in wood carving are stylistic just because getting realism is difficult, and getting realism in wood carving is like double difficult. So if anyone has any suggestions for any of the other boxes, let me know. I think next time we'll do this whale tail up here. But until then, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will catch you again next time.